Okay, so no one feels like this is an intractable problem anymore, right? We are ready for action.
Big momentum.
Yeah.
There is.
It is an important time, and it's an important time both for the Bay Area and innovation as well as it is for federal and state policy. And so I want to ask each of you, Chris, you've got these kids from your social work days, your first 5 days, your starting preschools all over the Bay Area days. You have that kind of innovation, those kind of families in your mind. You have these polls that you need to provide the data that these kids actually matter to our federal elected officials. So what do you want these guys to do? I mean, they can answer a poll in the way you want, but when you think about from the micro Bay Area preschool around the corner that might maybe needs some extra hands to the federal level of really shifting the way we think about our future through our kids, what is it that you need from them?
So at the First 5 Years Fund, we represent 8 foundations. They pool their funds with us at the beginning of the year. We bring them to Washington. We go in a room, we shut the door, and the Republican lobbyists and the communications specialists that we have on our team tell them what they think is going to happen that year in Washington on our issue. And we hired some of the people that helped elect this president and other people that didn't win the White House to share that information with them and to get them to feel like they personally have to help. That without them calling once in a while and them coming to Washington and them hosting meetings in their home states, George Kaiser's a great example, J.B. Pritzker, Susie Buffett, they personally find out what's expected of them that year to get the result we say we want. Yeah. The results we typically want are increases in spending on our issue. And what's nice about early childhood is it's a very open frontier. It's like an open system. It's not K-12. Many of you and many people have become very disillusioned by the K-12 system. It's hard to permeate and penetrate and change it. But with early learning, there's this sense that there's a blue sky, that if we try hard enough, if we talk enough, if we poll enough, if we research it enough, if we come together, we'll actually come up with a better result. And these funders that we work with really have felt that way for almost 8 years now. In those 8 years, they've been very influential personally. We're there to support them, but we kind of tee them up. And we say, Susie, today's the day you're calling Senator Cole. Today's the day. George Kaiser, same thing. And we do that because their calls, their meetings are treated differently than anybody else's call. I won't go into whether or not that's the way it should be, but that's the way it is. And so, Susan, to your question, they live this every day. They invest personally in programs in their hometowns. And they see personally that they can't solve the problem by themselves, and they're really frustrated personally. So when they go to Washington or they go to their state capital and say, I'm sick of being the only one who cares about these kids in my community, you're one of 5. You're building an arts center. You're building a new gymnasium. You're bringing in another professional sports team. And meanwhile, these kids, the poverty rates are going up and these families are suffering. So they carry the message. First 5 Years Fund essentially is creating a blueprint for the year. This can be done at the state level, the city level as well. We create a war room, which is essentially the way we organize our work among the national orgs. We bring everybody together every week and every month, and we say, where were you? Who did you talk to? Where are you going next week? And we tell each other everything we possibly can so that our team gets bigger, our influence stretches further, and our resources are not competing against each other like they used to, and instead we're sort of enhancing and leveraging each other's investments. And I want to underscore that point, not only on the advocacy front, but at the program level if you choose to invest in local programs. Be sure you would leverage all of the other investments people are already making so that you get a huge bang for your buck. So if there is a tried and true program, UCSF, literacy programs all over, they've already demonstrated that they're really effective. So you're not spending money to find out if they're effective or not. You're spending money to get it to more kids. You're increasing the access to that program. Maybe you're increasing the dosage of that program. Those are really important differences. So you should see the difference in however this is presented to you between a startup, a new thing, and an existing thing that could be spread more widely, an advocate like me, or Jim, or frankly Dana, everybody else is everybody's an advocate, is trying to take all of these stories, aggregate them, and take them to the members of Congress or City Hall or the state legislature, wherever we are, to say, all right, the private people, they've done everything they possibly can, now what are you gonna do? And then they have to feel the pressure every time they come home, every time they go back, every time they go anywhere, that people are asking them everywhere they go, what are you doing about this issue? So if you're making political contributions, please ask people what they do on this issue before you make a political contribution. You are going to be asked a lot for your support. Ask every candidate who calls you what they're doing about early childhood. That makes a huge difference. If you're invited to parties and they're speaking, raise your hand and ask them what they're doing about early childhood. If you are at a dinner party and nobody else is bringing anything up, bring it up. It should feel like you can't escape it. That everywhere you go, really nice people that you've liked for years will not shut up about early childhood. That's how it should feel. And, you know, we're all creating this sort of optics of inevitability around this. We are small, but we're mighty. And the more we repeat each other, the more we telegraph these stories, and the more we become persistent, the more likely it is this will happen. Think of other social movements where they have just hammered and hammered and hammered on it for years, and they've gotten something big. And I think that's what we have to do here.
I love the idea of California's congressional delegation coming home to you all and being asked, what are you doing about early childhood?
Yeah.
That's a good picture, isn't it? This is a good group for them to come home to.
Yeah. And your assembly and state legislatures who
well.
haven't voted for big increases in the past 5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
It's just interesting to hear what they might have to say. They might have something amazing to say about it.
So Dana, Dr. Long, from UCS Benioff Children's Hospital, Oakland. I want to ask you, so from this idea that Chris and Jim are presenting, that we can build this solid base of support for early childhood programs through public dollars, through our nation's investment in what it is to be a young child and to have a promise of a future in America. And then you're looking at Isaac, and probably Dante is one of your patients as well. And you're looking at families. What is it that the Bay Area can lend in terms of innovation? So we get this base of support from the public. And then what is it? What's the next level that we can do for children and families for their well-being?
So that's a great question. And one of the things that we recently launched as of April of 2015, because of the generous support of Dr. Lubin, was that we created the Center for Community Health and Engagement. And the purpose of our center is to really be a backbone organization, to be a focal point for issues of training and advocacy, education, program development, and research about social determinants of health and equity. And we are piloting programs and collaborating with partners, and really, we are the ones that are gathering the evidence so that then Chris can go to DC or to the Capitol. And so what I see our role is, one is that we are scientists. We can provide expert testimony. Two, we have the patient populations, and we have the willingness, and now because of our Center for Community Health and Engagement, we have the infrastructure to support both piloting new programs. One of the examples that I would like to share with you about a great partnership is through my FIND program, which is the Family Information and Navigation Desk. I recently had a philanthropist approach me with an amazing tech background, and he said, Dana, what you're doing is great, but the way that we were managing our data and our patients was by using Excel. He's like, Dana, you can't scale with Excel. And so what he did is he used his tech background, and he and I sat together, and as a clinician, I have a certain way that I approach a patient, right? I go through my subjective information first, and then I do my objective, and then I do my assessment, and then I do my plan. And I have a logic for how do I treat asthma? How do I treat ear infections? And quite frankly, we should be treating these determinants of health, food insecurity, access to physical activity, access to childcare in the very same scientific methodology and with the same rigor that I treat pneumonia. And so in my mind, if I have a family and they're food insecure, Well, do you need food today or do you need food in general? Are you signed up for Woman, Infant, Child? Are you signed up for food stamps? Do you know where your local food bank is? There is a logic there. And I was able to sit with this gentleman, and as I talked, he was coding the logic. And now we have this amazing program called Find Connect that we just launched last week and that we are currently piloting and scaling and hope to be able to share throughout the Bay Area. And so it's a good example of how it is that a philanthropist can actually co-learn and co-create. It's not simply about investing, it's about making something new.
I like to say that philanthropy is about opportunity, like what Dana's just
Yeah.
described. Should we give that a little hand? Okay. And that opportunity truly is in each of you. And I know that Amplifier Strategies will put forth 20 applications, is that right, to you? I've had a little sneak preview of some of them. They're all pretty exciting proposals. And I would also ask that as you get excited about them, you think about this personal kind of role. Some people you see may need a business plan. Some may need a technology plan, a communication strategy. My guess is in this room, there are many people here who could assist in the scaling, the replication, the building of the evidence base to advance this work, as well as to do this policy work and be on the phone. Now Chris wants you in a room with who knows in DC. But I think that the gifts that you all have beyond your financial resources are also really valuable in this field. There's been this kind of toiling mentality of just get the work done, understand what it is to change the adult-child interaction, understand what it is to meet the many needs that children have, to put them on a new trajectory. And sometimes we lack what you all bring. So don't underestimate that part either. I think that was a great illustration, Dana. All right, Jim, we've got a few minutes left before we take questions from the club members. So I want to really ask you more about families. We've talked some about policy and about programs. What do you think families need right now in the Bay Area as we're thinking about investments in programs and in local communities? What do you feel like are the big issues for families?
I mean, I'd say investment and information. It's interesting, just to pick up on what Dana said, because we're actually going to look at this in the Right Start Commission. One of the big challenges you face, this is just to build off the innovation idea, and some of you all who are tech folks who could think about this. One of the big issues if you're a low-income family is you have 19 different places to go in order to get those things. SNAP, food stamps is called SNAP now, or or WIC, right? You have 19 different places you got to go to get all those services. By the way, the most talented person in this room with an MBA from Stanford would not know how to go to all those 19 places. So imagine yourself as someone who maybe graduated from 10th grade and has 3 kids and is living in a very tough social condition. And to get all the services you need for your kid, you have to go to 19 different places. So the opportunity to use technology and database software to simplify for the average person is humongous. And I'm sure we're going to talk about this afterwards.
Not
just for the Bay Area, but to scale this in California. Because and you have to do this. But the impact on the individual family would be enormous. I mean, think about it as a parent, because how many of you all are parents? So, and I would think about this always, you always think about it through the lens of your own children. You do. I started children now when I was single, so I remember running this large child advocacy group, but I didn't have my own kids. But it all changes when you have your own kids, because you really do understand the lens of it as a parent. So as a family, I think you first and foremost think about what can I get for my kid? And you need information and training, and in some cases you need investment. Some of us have the resources so we can access everything. But the truth is we have to give every kid, which means every family, the access to those resources in the most straightforward and simple way. So one is you have to have simple, easy to use information. The second though is, and this is what we've all been touching on, is the training in many cases. You know, our colleague, George Halverson, who chaired First Five, who was the CEO of Kaiser Permanente and now chairs First Five around the state. His whole deal, he's a member of the Right Start Commission, is parents, what are we going to message to parents? How do you give them the information and the training they need to be good parents? And that may sound silly, but in fact, we do need to train parents, and we need to invest in that as a society in multi-languages. Bert sitting over here who's the head of Oakland Children's. He knows that. You have to actually train parents in parenting skills. And the final thing is, and Chris hit this nail on the head, you have to invest resources in families. I mean, one of the things we've been so stupid about as a society over the past 2 or 3 decades is not investing in families. That involves everything from wages, to how we, to the huge income gaps we face in this society, which some of us may have benefited from, but the average family has not. So information, training and education, and investment are sort of the three things that I think every family needs. And everybody in this room has an opportunity to operate on all three of those levels. That's the really fine thing about battery powered. You can do it in your own home. You can do it here in San Francisco or in the East Bay or in the South Bay. You can be involved in one little community center and make a huge difference there. And then come work with Chris. Come work with Common Sense. Change it at the mass scale level too. But all of us have a chance to make a difference on any of those levels.
So Dana has told us that our babies' brains are bubbling at a level that will never be repeated again in our development. Our neurons are connected in these synapses that are truly exceptional. We're talking about billions. Like there are more neurons than there are leaves in the rainforest when we're born. And how they connect and what we do with them truly determines our future. And our next job as we're leaving our first 3 years is to prune those connections. So what doesn't get used in those first couple of years of life, they have to just be shed away because frankly our brains would like be too heavy. And so just for efficiency, we have to prune those neurons. And when we prune them, it's kind of a use it or lose it. If children have not had the optimal experiences they need, they will not have the use of those connections that Dana talked about. Jim talked about the importance of families and the return on investment, that we truly can invest in families, invest in children, and get to a level of impact that's pretty phenomenal, that is nation-changing for us. Chris talked about how we can galvanize our country's leaders to make sure that we're providing a base of support that makes sense to us for our ethics, for what we believe in, for human capital, for the future. And we all say to you that you are in this great position to impact something in the Bay Area that triggers a flicker of light, not only in Dante and Isaac's life, but also in this greater challenge that we have in America to make sure that children have an opportunity to succeed, that we can unlock the potential. That's true for Allison's baby, true for the babies you love, and true for all these other kids. So it's really exciting for us to get to be here with you and to just understand what matters to you and get a sense of what is the return you want to see from this big investment you're going to make this. Is it quarterly? Every 4 months.
November 12th.
On November 12th, what you'll do. We all have our favorite programs in that 20. I'm really being disciplined and not telling you what I want you to do, but I can talk to you after class. Anyway, we're really excited. We have a couple of minutes for questions, would you say?
Two audience questions.
All right, top 2 questions, so you got to be, all right.
Okay. So as a Scot living in the Bay Area, it's just been really helpful for me understanding more about the issues here. I have 2 boys, 14 and 11, so we get past the 0 to 8. But the question was, are there really great places in the world, cities or countries that are doing this really well? Are there states and cities in the US that are doing this really well? Any kind of models we can look to for, excellence perhaps? And then secondly, how do we measure success? How do we know things are working well? Because I know there's a lot of controversy over standardized testing. Is that the right way to say, we're achieving success? So those are the two.
Great questions. Well, Chris and I have been to Omaha together, so maybe you should answer that, Chris.
Yeah, I'll do the first question because of the 28 industrialized countries where there is a sort of standardized, it's called PISA, where they rank all this, they use the same assessment to rank the states, the countries. We come in 26th as a nation on early learning outcomes. It's abysmal, it's embarrassing, it's a moral tragedy, and this is as strong as I can be about it. So in comparison to other countries, we have a long, long, long way to go. In terms of places in the world or in the United States that are shining examples despite the larger context of the United States, Omaha, Chicago, Tulsa, New York City, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Washington, D.C. I could go on and on. Seattle, Portland have done tremendous things with local taxes, state taxes, foundation funding, corporate sponsorships. Republicans sneaking things into budgets 10 years ago and then making sure they don't go away. I mean, really, really clever, creative things that could absolutely be replicated. In other countries, interestingly enough, many of the cities in China are doing unbelievably innovative things. They're teaching calculus to 3-year-olds. And I'm saying that because I'm so envious that they have figured out how to do it in a way that they're just absolutely delighted with how quickly children can learn these complex mathematical calculations at a very young age, because they're teaching it in a developmentally appropriate way. The Scandinavian countries, obviously France is sort of the gold standard for early learning, but there are other examples in other parts of Europe, the Montessori model out of Italy, etc. So there's no shortage of examples in the US and elsewhere where we would all be happy to send our children. But universally speaking, there's a lot of variety and difference across them all.
There's a very interesting This American Life episode that you can download online about Tulsa. And it's a fascinating story of Republicans sort of sneaking in and taking football funding from full-day kindergarten and making universal preschool. I mean, the ways that Americans have gone about this work is actually quite interesting, so I recommend that entertaining episode.
And I want to give a huge shout out to the Republican governors and other members of legislatures across this country who have been, frankly, out in front on this. There were more quotes from State of the State addresses from Republican governors saying, I'm going to do something about early learning, than Democratic governors last year. And so it's easy in the bluest city, in the bluest state, in the bluest country to say, oh, well, Democrats, we care about social issues and we're going to invest in them. And actually, we're lagging behind. I'm a Democrat. I can say we. The Republican leaders in state and local governments, because they're close to their constituents and they want to take this on. The evidence is strong. And they've done it in really clever ways. So I think there's a lot of bipartisan support, too, in states.
I think you had an interesting second part of your question as well, which is around how do we know? And do we want to just push down standardized testing on young children? Probably none of us would be supportive of that. So what is it to raise? I like to think of it as joyful, confident learners who have secured the necessary predictive skills to be successful. And there are ways to measure that. And so, earlier when I showed you my little assessment that Dante couldn't muster the ability to get through, that's part of it. But we are looking at children. I think that the 3 issue areas in the brief are really important. The healthy environments, that children love being learners. If you don't love being a learner, all of these skills don't matter that much. The children have the necessary predictive literacy skills so that they can read to learn when it's time to do so. Imagine if Dante would have gone to kindergarten and not known the word apple. He would have felt completely diminished as a learner and unable to succeed. And this experiential learning that children can actually do. Children develop skills through doing. And so these are the kinds of things that we want to measure. And we want to measure if adults have the capacity to build those skills, the joy, the confidence, as well as the secured skills. So it can be done without any kind of pushing down of standards. And I think it's a really important caution. We don't want to do the worst of K-12 on young children. We want to do the very best we can do that science tells us.
One more short.
All right, one more, a shorty.
2 years ago, you started a venture with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Graphite, which is a social network in a sense for educators. And I'm curious what's come out of that is helpful in this whole discussion. Are you learning something from the people on the front lines?
The answer, so what we built, we built it with Bill Gates, not with the foundation. It's actually Bill Gates himself. And because we have a rating system for consumer products, for movies, TV, video games, et cetera, we were interested, could you build an educational rating system for digital media and for digital products? Because if you think about education now, the backpacks that you and I carried and some of our older children carried to school ain't going to be there in a few years. Everything's going to be digital, right? The content. So the question is that Common Sense Graphite is a digital educational rating system that rates learning potential, the educational value. So what we do is we started out by looking at K through 12 products, everything from courseware to apps. Remember, people are now teaching through apps, games, et cetera. That's the new form of content. The truth is, young people today in the 0 to 5 age range are increasingly being exposed to iPads and tablets, and a lot of the learning that by the way, there's no substitute for blocks and unstructured play and all the things that we all did and were raised on in children. That's really critical. But what the idea there was to create an educational rating system that matched the learning potential for digital products, educational products. And what we're going to build that out to now is product probably for kids 3 and up. And because now if you go into more sophisticated early childhood programs, you know, the old days they plunked kids in not so good childcare situations in front of a video screen where they watch 9 episodes of Barney all day long. Now they have really interesting games, and you want to limit screen time and not do it too much. But the idea is build a platform so that parents and educators can figure out what software used wisely has the best learning potential. And I will tell you that over the next 5 to 10 years, with the exception of the brain development issues that Dana was talking about earlier, because you want to limit amount of screen time. You don't want a kid sitting in front of a screen for 6 or 7 hours a day at any age, let alone as a 3-year-old. The idea was to build a learning educational rating system. It's been an enormous success, and it's in, you know, half the schools in the country, and I think it'll hopefully be in half the early childhood centers in the country soon too.
Thank you. I think Abby's going to pull us up.
Thank you, Abby. Thank you. Thank you for putting together such a good group of people.
I would like to thank each of you, Susan, Chris, Dana, Jim. Thank you so much for coming tonight and sharing with us. And Jen and Michael and Allison, thank you. And you know, what you guys were able to bring to life for us through all of your expertise was incredibly powerful. And I would be remiss if I didn't recognize the people who are working behind the scenes as well, who've been on our team working really hard to try to figure out how to digest this content for you guys in a way that is very digestible and very snackable. So I'd like to thank my colleagues Julia, Ren, Jill, Barbie, Chantal, Maria, and there are many others who are not here tonight but are part of bringing this experience to all of you. So we're very proud of this team and what we're able to do together. Thank you for this theme is going to be amazing. And we have 3 very special events coming up for you guys in October alone. Because there are 20 amazing organizations, and for the first time we're looking at for-profits and not-for-profits, we have 2 organization nights, right? Because we're really exploring a lot. So October 20th and October 29th are those evenings. And we're planning a site visit to the Bay Area Discovery Museum because they've just launched a very kinesthetic learning lab, which encapsulates so much of what all of you guys are talking about and is a leading model for what's taking place. And so I invite all of you, there are cards and dates and all of it, so if I got the dates wrong, I'm sorry, I don't think I did. But they're out there, so we hope that you will join us. And battery powered, we are entering that 2nd year, and we're so excited with the momentum. We're so excited, in fact, that we recruited somebody from New York to come and join us to help make it amazing. So I'd like to bring Wendy forward and introduce you to our newest battery powered colleague, Wendy Wexel, who's going to talk with you a little bit about what our fall campaign encompasses.
Oh, thank you, Abby.
You're welcome.
And I have to be honest, it's actually a dream come true to be in front of all of you. I moved here from New York because I believe in the possibility that this community can unlock. And that's a true story, and I actually told it to Michael when we were in a meeting because what everyone can create together is where we can actually grow, and it's fun. And so my goal is to make it really fun. And so I'm going to make it a little interactive in talking about the campaign. So what is a number between 1 and 10 that's lucky? 7, yes. And, okay, feeling good, all right.
She went to Northwestern.
Yes, Northwestern, there we go. And, you know, raise your hand if you're lucky. Who's been lucky in life? Yeah, it's all been really good. It's been really, really good. And so this fall, it's all going to be around getting lucky, making it fun. Oh, yeah. And it's called the 7 by 700. And so we're making this big, hairy, audacious goal as a community and rallying as a team to get to $7 million, 700 members. And I know it's possible. And I moved here from New York because I know it's to be true. And so this is the rallying call, and this is the announcement. And so it's gonna keep. Oh, I'm an evangelizer. It's gonna happen. I love generosity. It's true. Generosity is a force, and I just want us to all understand that. And so I'm really honored to work with all of you. Please come up to me. Please introduce yourself, and it's gonna be a really fabulous fall. Thank you.
Able to stay for a little bit before we whisk them away. So if you guys do have questions, we weren't able to give that much audience time, so please come up. They're pretty friendly. We can answer your questions for you. And thank you so much for being here, and we'll see you soon.